Kelli here. Welcome back to the craft social Holly Jolly Craftmas. I hope you're having a great time and are excited for another craft today. So today we're going to be making a blanket. I have seen this on YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, you name it. And I have always wanted to hand knit a soft blankie. However, I don't work with fiber. I don't sew, knit, or crochet. The only sewing I do is on paper. Any sewing project I've ever tried to encounter has been very frustrating for me. But I've always wanted to try this hand knitting a blanket or scarf or something to that effect, and I've decided I'm gonna go for it. I already have made a small lap blanket, which I will show you guys here. And I gotta tell you guys, it was really, really easy. And if I can do this, you can do this. So here's what you're going to need. You're gonna need some yarn. So you're gonna need some scissors. You're gonna need some hands. So you're gonna need the yarn. This is the Burn It Blanket Extra. This is what I used for the blanket that I just showed you guys. And it's really soft and plush. I already have a skein kind of started. So let me show you guys just for kind of a scale on how plushy it is. So for scale, here's a pencil. So a little bigger than a pencil, number 2 pencil. It's super, super soft. So this is the yarn that I'm gonna be working with. I wouldn't maybe go too much smaller than this, but you could totally go bigger. And let me show you how to identify what type of yarn you're looking for. The first batch I got from Amazon, and then this I picked up at Joann's. But what we're looking for is this information right here. So this is considered a jumbo 7 gauge. So we're looking for the gauge. The higher the number, the larger the yarn. We're also looking here for the net weight. This is 10.5 ounces. So that's 10.5 ounces for this whole entire skein. And it also will give you the yardage. So this is 97 yards. So that's what you're looking for when you are purchasing your yarn. Now the lap blanket that I just showed you guys in the photo, I used only 1 skein and it measured out to be about 28 inches by 44 inches. A perfect little lap blanket. I made it just so I could have it in my craft room and be all super duper cozy. So this time I'm gonna make it with 2 skeins. I'm gonna make it a little larger. I'm making this one for my daughter. She saw the little lamp blanket and asked me for a blanket for herself. And of course her favorite color is blue. So I went with this really cool blue color. There was plenty of options and I got a little carried away. I plan on making blankets for everybody this holiday season. So gonna need your yarn, scissors, hands. Now let me show you a little trick. If you're not real familiar with working with any sort of yarn, I'm amazed that I know anything about this at all, honestly, because I'd run from any sort of fiber craft. But I do know this trick. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start your yarn from the center. So when you go into the middle, you should be able to pull out the yarn. And you'll be able to pull it out from the center. And that's where you're going to get your working yarn from. So that you won't have to unravel this whole big ball. Like, see, here's the piece on the outside. If I was to start with this would soon come out of this paper and it would be a hot mess. So that's one trick for you. So let me get this out of the way. Scissors out of the way. The next tip that I'm going to give you right off the bat, because I didn't learn this until partway through this blanket, was to always keep the skein working in the direction you're knitting towards. And that'll make sense in just a few minutes, but I wanted to get that in your brain now so that it becomes habit for you to be moving this. Okay, so let's get started. So we've got our yarn, and first thing you're going to do is create a knot and a loop at the end. Now, I watched a ton of videos on how to do this and all kinds of fancy slip knot and twist it this way and turn it this way and do that. And I tried all the different ways, and I am completely stupid when it comes to this kind of stuff. It takes me 5 or 6 times to watch somebody do something with tying or knitting to figure it out. That's why I've never tackled this project. But trust me, this is super easy. I figured out that it doesn't really matter how you knot it. Knot it however you want, as long as you end up with a loop. So I go the old standard, like you're tying a shoe. So this first loop, you can see it's about the width of my 2 fingers. That's about as big as I want my loops to be. You can go much bigger, but the bigger the loop, the more kind of like loose and more holes you're going to have in your blanket, if that makes sense. The tighter the loop, the more tight your blanket's going to be. My lap blanket that I first attempted is all over the place. Some of my rows were nice and tight, some were completely a mess. I think I missed a few stitches, dropped a few stitches. You really can't tell. But if you're looking for something uniform, just keep that in mind. You're going to want to kind of keep your loops about the same size. So I've got my loop. Terminology, let's talk that real quick. So this is going to be our loop. This is going to be our working yarn. This is the skein. We're going to create a chain, and then we're going to be knitting in the loops. This will all come together in just a few minutes for you, but I want you to hear the terminology. These are not, maybe these are terms that are widely spread out and known in the knitting world, but today these are Kelli terms, so that's what I'm going with. Okay, so to get started, we're going to take our knitting tools, our fingers, put them through the front of the loop, just through the loop. You're going to pull your working yarn and you're going to pull it through to create your second loop. So now I have 2 loops. I'm going to move my skein over so I know which direction I'm going here. Next thing you're going to want to know is that the length of this chain is what's going to determine the width of your blanket. So for example, the lap blanket that I showed you guys, I worked with 21 loops, just happened to be when I stopped. So I had 21 loops in my chain, and that's what determined that width. Now this time I'm going to go a little wider because this is for my daughter and I want it to just be a little bit wider than that. And then length doesn't really matter because you can just keep on knitting and knitting and knitting until you get to the length that you want. But this part right here is what's going to determine the width, and once you get this part done, there's no changing that. So keep track of your loops. You're going to want to count how you go. So you might want to get out maybe a measuring tape so you have an idea of how long you want your blanket to be. I'm going to eyeball it. I'm just going to go to be about yay big, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to keep track of my loops. So let me go ahead and get going. So again, we're going through and pulling the working yarn into a loop. Now you see how it's creating this braid? That's exactly what you're going to want to see. It'll start creating this chained braid. If you find that you start to get your loops a little too big, just back your working yarn out a little bit, readjust. You can pull this snug a little. You don't want to pull it super tight, but you can pull it snug a little. Okay, so I have gone ahead and made this 30 loops long. It's a pretty good size blanket. I think my daughter is going to love it. So the next thing, first I want to just make sure that my blanket is all still straight. It got a little flipped there. I don't know if you could see it, but it was kind of twisted. So we want it all to be straight. Okay, so this part was probably the most frustrating for me because it was a little bit difficult to get this part in my brain to work. But trust me, once I figured it out, it was very, very simple. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we need to create loops that are gonna start our knitting. So this is our chain, and now we're gonna create the loops to create the knit. So I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna move my skein, pull out some extra yarn, that out of the way. Okay, so I pulled up through the last loop I had done on my chain. I pulled another loop up, and now I'm gonna be working the other direction. So I'm gonna be going to the left now. So I have a loop, I'm gonna pull my working yarn up in between each of those loops that I created. This is where I got a little bit frustrated because I was having a hard time seeing where my loop should be. But once you get going, it will totally make sense. Just take your time and just kind of feel for the next chain, the next loop. And then you're going to want to pull up your working yarn and create a loop. Now your loops, instead of facing this direction, will be facing up this direction. So hopefully you can see what I'm saying. And again, you want to kind of keep your loops consistent on their size. Once you get through this row, it will be like piece of cake time. So again, I'm just going through, pulling up from underneath or from behind, whichever terminology works better for your brain. Going through the chain, pulling up a loop. You want to kind of just pause and count how many you have. You should end up with the same amount as you had started with. So in my case, I had 30. Here's a goofy thing where it looks like I may have dropped a stitch already. So I'm not going to worry about that right now because it can be fixed in the end, or it'll make sense when it all comes together. Okay, so let's count and see if I'm still on track here. Like I said, this is kind of one of those crafts that it's really, really hard to mess up. So embrace the imperfections. If it really bugs you, give yourself some grace. Start a few times. I won't lie, on my little lap blanket, I started this process 3 times before I felt like I really had a good handle on what was going on. And if that's something you feel like you want to do before you jump right into making your blanket, take your yarn and practice. Do 10 stitches, 10 loops on your chain, and then do this process of going back just to get the feel for it, and so you can see how it's going to look, because I think that can be key sometimes, is practicing just to see what your end result's supposed to look like. Okay, so now that we're at this stage, we're just gonna start. This is the knitting part. This is where it gets easy. You throw on your favorite YouTube channel, a podcast, a movie in the background, and you just have some of that kind of numb out time. Put on your favorite Christmas music, whatever gets you going. So you're basically just now going to go ahead and move your skein to the other side, Like I said, get in the practice of that. It will make it easier for you. Pull out some yarn. Okay, so now you're just gonna go through and create loops. Loops within the loops. Same thing, you're just gonna go from the front to the back. So putting your knitting tools, your fingers, through the loop and drawing up that working yarn from the back. And you're just gonna move right on down the line. See, here's that spot where I think I dropped a stitch. I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. So I think what I'm gonna do, because I'm right here, is I'm gonna go and I'm gonna pull that loop I had created up through. I pulled that bottom up and pulled that loop up through it just to kind of snug it up and get it out of the way so it doesn't look like a hole. So that's the other thing you get to do, is you get to kind of get creative a little bit when you come to some sort of thing like that where you're like, what can I do to make that not look like that? Again, because I don't knit or crochet or any of those things, I don't know if there's an actual way to handle that problem. I just do the Kelli thing and make it work. Okay, so I'm at the last stitch. So I'm just gonna pull a loop through. I'm gonna move my skein over. And then I'm going to pull another loop through that one. And that's going to begin the next row, the next chain. So I'm just going to keep working on this. I am running out of light. That's the beauty of living in the Midwest in the winter. 4 o'clock hits and that's it for the sunshine, if we get that at all. So the next time I pick up with this, I will have better lighting and we'll see how far I've gotten. A couple more tips that I just want to give you. In case I don't mention it when I get to that part, is that when you start to get some length going, fold the blanket over on itself and kind of roll it up just so that it's not draped over the table. If you drape it over your table or your work surface, if you happen to be working on a table, the weight of it might start to pull a little. I had that problem when I was working on my little lap blanket, and I found that actually rolling it on itself worked a little bit better. So that's my little tip. Unless you're working on the floor, then it doesn't matter as much, but rolling it on itself will probably help. So I'm going to keep working on this, and the next time I catch up with you guys, I will have hopefully most of my blanket done, and I will show you how to finish it off. Point out to you here how you can add on the second skein. It's very simple. You just basically take the two ends and you're going to tie them into a knot. So this is how you would be able to either add on an additional skein in the same color, or if you wanted to do a multicolored blanket, you could do the same thing. You could add on to it, and you could do that in any place. So you could do, several rows of blue color and then several rows of, let's say, white, and then alternate. And all you simply do is you just tie them together. And once you start knitting back into your loops, you're going to lose that little knot and you won't even know that you are working with more than one skein. Okay, so I'm at the end of the blanket and I want to show you guys how to finish this off. So I probably have enough to go maybe 2 more loop chains, but I'm just going to go ahead and finish it here. Okay, so to finish the blanket, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead, once you've gotten to the end of your row, you're going to go ahead and you're going to do a new loop. This excess out of the way here. Okay, so you're going to do a new loop. You're going to do another new loop, And now you're going to take the new loop and put it through the old loop, the loop you had just created, okay? So do it again. So I'm going to take and create a new loop. I'm going to take the new loop and put it through the old loop. So the new loop becomes the old loop. You're just going to keep doing that down the row. So what you can see here is I'm basically finishing it off by creating a braid, or basically another exact same chain that we started the blanket with. Let me just go ahead and finish it up and I'll show you how to tie it off. Okay, so we're getting to the very end. I only have a few loops left, and grab my scissors so I have those handy. And I'm just going to take new loop to old loop. Okay, so we're at the end, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. So now I'm left with one last loop. I'm going to go ahead and cut myself a little bit of a tail here. And now all I'm going to do is bring the tail back up through the loop and back through, knotting it. Give it a good pull. And now you can weave this tail into the blanket. I, however, don't like that because I know when it becomes loose, it's going to be something I play with. So I'm just going to go ahead and snip it off. So, uh-oh, I snipped it too close. Figures. Let me go ahead and retie that. But you know what? That's okay, because now you can see that it's really okay. This doesn't matter really how you tie it off at the end. You really can't mess it up. There we go. So just for good measure, I'm going to tie it around one more time here. And there you have it. So I have a little bit of yarn left. I don't need that. I'll get rid of that. And my blanket is complete. So flip it over so you can see what the other side looks like. There you have it. So now this is actually my third blanket that I have completed. And already I can see the progression on how much better I'm getting at it. So a little bit of practice goes a long way. This blanket is definitely better than my previous two. I have very few open gaps in it, and I will show you a comparison in a close-up photo of what the progression has been in my blanket making, but I'm pretty pleased. This one looks really good. So this is the one that will go to my mama. So the kid gets the one with a little bit of a defect, and this one will be a gift for my mom. I hope you really enjoyed this craft. I hope you'll give it a try. This cozy blanket, I mean, I just want to sit and play with it and feel it all day long. It's so soft and cozy. I really hope that you give this craft a try. I think this would make an excellent gift. I was able to get the 2 skeins that I needed for this blanket for $6.99 each on sale at Joann's. Stack your coupons. Get yourself some yarn, make some cozy blankets, and have fun with this craft. If you like this video, friends, I would love for you to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. And finally, don't forget to hit that bell so you're getting notifications of new videos when they're posted. Be sure to check back tomorrow as a new video will be up on my channel as part of the Craft Social Holly Jolly Craftmas. Thanks, friends, and I'll see you next time.